Hello, stream. We're online. Just gonna send can you send them down the way? Thanks. All right, hi everybody. Welcome to meetup number 91, second for the 2020. Thanks, Chris. This is our second time in the NAB venue, so if you haven't been here before and you need to use the bathroom, then just back out through the glass doors and just across the hall there. So you'll need to ask the security lady to let you back in. Is there anyone who's new here tonight? And I don't just mean new venue, but the first time coming to the meetup? Wow, that's a lot of people. Welcome. Hopefully we see you back again next month. Just a quick run through of what's going on tonight. We're at the introduction phase now. Straight after this, Ian and Guy will be doing the What's New in AWS. We don't have a 6:15 lightning talk, that's why we started a little bit later. Michael Hyatt will be up as our first presentation though, like the meat of tonight's content, about using function beat to send Kinesis SQS data to, what is it? Elasticsearch. So this is going to be a really interesting one. Just before the break, we have our marketplace or who's hiring segment. It's a great point to, if you're looking for people or you're looking for work, we try to make a connection so that you can have a chat during the break. Then of course we have our pizza break. Pizzas usually get here earlier than that, but we try to have it at 7. And then straight after the break, thank you, Jason has stood up and is going to give us a quick overview of the AWS config conformance packs. And we might have a little bit more if we need it at the end too. Thank you very much to our gold sponsor again for 2020, Enabler. Yeah, there's the official cheerleader at the back corner there. And our 2 silver sponsors, AC3 and CMD. Thanks to them as well. And as well to NAD for providing the venue and the stuff as well. It takes a lot to put these events on, and we couldn't do it without the backing of our sponsors and their support and assistance throughout the year. So who are we? My name is Rob. My co-organizer in the front row here is Ian, the one wearing the official shirt that he didn't bring back one for me from Vegas for. Thanks, Ian. You're welcome. And something that you should know is that we don't work for Amazon. We're part of this community. This user group is run for the community, by the community. So because we don't work for Amazon, we don't have to toe the company line. If you want to get up here and say something negative about AWS, feel free. Like, as long as we're being open and honest, we're all here to share and learn in whatever way we can. A great place to do that is our Slack team. We have one of the most active Slack teams for a community in the country in general, but also around the world. I think we're probably third or fourth of the large AWS communities that are out there. And it's a great place to ask questions, talk about new things. It's where everybody seems to end up whenever there is an outage in the Sydney region. Also for sharing and finding jobs as well, that's been pretty active this year so far. That's probably about it. But there's also opportunities for you to get involved in helping run the group. We're always looking for speakers. A sponsorship is still open for 2020 as well. And these events take a lot of hands to put together. So anyone who wants to step up and volunteer, help out on the night, or help out with, we do things like video editing, there's the managing the website, all that sort of stuff. There's just a whole bunch of work that we could always use some help with. The other good thing to note is that we try to make this as welcoming an event and as community as we possibly can. So we do have a code of conduct. It's been adapted from code of conducts for other groups as well as AWS, so there's probably nothing really in there, but we encourage you to have a look at it anyway. If you believe somebody has violated the code of conduct or you feel uncomfortable in any way, you can reach out to myself or Ian, or if you prefer to do so anonymously, there's other ways to contact us on the website. But rest assured, we do take it very seriously. So what else is going on in the world? The Sydney Summit's coming up in about 30 days or so at the International Convention Centre at Darling Harbour. That's a good one. It's got the Innovation Day as well on the 31st. I'll be there for the 1st and the 2nd this year. Who else is going? Oh yeah, that's a few. It's definitely a great event if you've got the opportunity to get up there for it. A little bit further afield, but worth mentioning, is the Singapore Summit as well. If you've been to Sydney so many times you can't be bothered going anymore, check Singapore out. It's a couple of weeks later. A bit further afield is the Mars event, Amazon's machine learning automation. I think I transcribed that wrong. Robotics and space one, that's in Vegas this year in June. And their security conference, Reinforce, coming up at the end of June, early July in Texas. Also a great one if you're on the periphery of cloud security. It's always one to follow. A little bit closer to home, if you were here last month, Matthew gave a great talk on the Amazon Connect setup, and now he's going to give a workshop on that at the AWS Programming and Tools Group. That's in 2 weeks, 2 weeks on Wednesday, up at the Amazon office. And that's all of the announcements that I have. Hand over to Ian and Guy for the news. Hi everyone on the stream. We don't have an audio patch during the news at the moment, but we'll have the audio back in about 5 minutes.
I'm guessing. All right. So good to go. Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Michael Hyde. Can you hear me okay at the back? All right, awesome. So I'll try to project my voice. So I work for Elastic. So there's a big Elastic logo on my back, a little Elastic logo here. I'm here to talk about the function beat. Function beat is a serverless ingest of cloud data supporting AWS. It's a great way to get your logs and other event data into Elasticsearch or other destinations. How many people here are familiar with Elastic Stack? Elasticsearch, predominantly. We have nothing to do with Elastic Beanstalk or Elastic Cache. I have to be honest and yeah. So we are the makers of Elasticsearch and Elastic Stack, which consists of Kibana, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Beats. And we're actually going to deep dive into one of the Beats family, one of the products that is called Function Beat. Now, we're talking today about Function Beat, which is a serverless data shipper. Now, serverless means it's going to run as Lambda. Means you don't have to run the servers. So it runs as Lambda. It is deployed as Lambda. And at the moment, it supports 3 different sources of data collected from AWS. So CloudWatch logs. We'll see a quick demo. I don't have a good reception in this building, but hopefully the demo works. So you can deploy a Lambda and connect it to your logs stored in CloudWatch and then ship them into Elastic Stack. You can ingest your Kinesis data into Elasticsearch. You can consume SQS messages, send them to Elasticsearch. It's an additional, basically, option to using other beats, beats from the Beats family in Elastic to ship data into Elastic. For example, you can ingest files using SQS, push them into Elasticsearch, visualize them in Kibana. Running Function Beat as Lambda allows us to leverage all the capabilities of Lambdas, such as auto-scaling, basically spinning them on and off on demand, depends on the volume of ingest, without worrying too much about the infrastructure. Okay. So as I mentioned, Function Beat is a type of beat. It's written in Go. It deploys as a function, as a Go version 1. Deploys as a function on serverless platforms. So it now supports Google Cloud, GCP, in addition to AWS. So we're kind of trying to make it a universal way to ship data in a serverless manner into Elasticsearch, but it supports a number of key AWS services such as CloudWatch, Kinesis, SQS. It's going to be other services added in the future. It's easy to collect and stream cloud data to Elasticsearch, so you don't need to deploy additional infrastructure. Again, Lambda, CloudWatch, Logs, SQS, now Kinesis. Additional thing it does is allowing you to transform data. So because typically events, logs, they're out of the box, they have just a message and the timestamp. That's not very useful, right? Sometimes logs are structured, there's metrics in the logs, so you do want to do additional processing. So Function Beat supports transformation of event, extraction of data using processor pipelines, and it can create structured log events or structured events out of your log files, log entries in CloudWatch.
You don't have to use Jolt transform?
Which one?
Jolt.
Jolt.
Yeah, like that weird syntax stuff that you have to run in Logstash to get it to do the transform of the incoming log messages.
Do you mean grok?
Oh yeah, that too, yeah.
Okay, yeah. It actually, Function Beat does not do grok.
Sweet.
Okay. You can do grok with ingest pipelines. We'll see, actually, that's what I'm doing in the demo. But Function Beat supports a different log parser. It supports dissect, which is more of a template way. So you're just saying, well, this is my field, space, field number 2, dash, field number 3. So it's more of a templated way of parsing events. So you can do it with function beats. So really sort of processing, creating parsing pipelines for your lambdas. Automations using single AWS CLI command. So when you deploy the beat, it actually can generate a CloudFormation descriptor for you, so you can actually reuse it for subsequent deployments. It's just sort of one command to deploy the whole thing once it's configured. So the use cases, where would you use it? So you're monitoring your infrastructure using Elasticstack, right? So it's predominantly working with Elasticstack, although it supports other destinations. So you can write it into, you can communicate with Logstash, or you can communicate with Kafka. Lots of organizations are using Elasticstack to monitor their deployments. So it allows you to stream your, for example, CloudWatch logs into Elasticstack. It basically integrates and triggers event processing from CloudWatch logs by creating a subscription. So every new log entry triggers a Lambda. So Lambda basically picks up a file and just pushes it into Elasticsearch. On the roadmap, we want to enable it further, and we want to add additional modules with turnkey dashboards. So at the moment, it doesn't come with any Kibana dashboards out of the box. It's quite easy to create, so we're thinking about sort of enabling it further with modules where the data structure is known, right? So we can pre-create a module in Kibana, so you can actually deploy the Lambda and just get dashboards out of the box with function beat.
So when you say pushes to Elastic, is that anywhere? Like it could be on-prem, it could be managed service, it could be EC2 instances, or?
Yes, yeah. So we'll see, but we'll have a look at the log at the configuration file. But there's two places where, like, essentially there's two types of Elastic definition. There's two types of Elastic targets, right? So you can use Cloud Auth, so you can talk to a managed Elastic version in Elastic Cloud, or you can talk to just Elasticsearch as a service, like through an endpoint. Okay, so there's two ways of configuring it. So additional use cases are event-driven processing. So you're streaming data through SQS or Kinesis, and you just want the Lambda to ingest the data and push it into Elasticsearch. So you can, for example, search this data or visualize it in Kibana or create alerts or do anything sort of that Elastic Cluster allows. It's just sort of yet another way of building an event-driven architecture with just a pre-configured, pre-built Lambda that just does the ingest. So you don't need to write your own ingest basically for Kinesis or SQS if your destination is Elasticsearch. That's pretty much the second family of use cases. So event-driven processing plus CloudWatch ingest into Elasticstack. In the demo today, I think it's a bit too much talk for a Lambda, for a simple Go Lambda that you configure, but it's extremely useful. So for today's demo, I have an EC2 Ubuntu machine running an Nginx server, just nothing on it. It's just an Nginx server that spits out access log, and I've got a CloudWatch agent that is configured to pick up the access log and send it into CloudWatch. Then I have a function beat Lambda that's configured basically to look for new entries in that particular log group, and it pushes it into Elasticsearch. Now, function beat in my example doesn't do any processing, although it can. I'm actually using ingest pipelines because I actually used Grok auto detector to parse the logs, because access logs are sort of, there's like one keyword that just parses the whole thing in Grok. So I just leveraged it, and this is what I plugged into ingest pipeline. We'll have a look how it's built. So then I can build dashboards in Kibana based on the log information or the log data that I'm ingesting. So a bit, why would you do something like that, right? Well, these are the logs you get. So they're the raw CloudWatch logs. You kind of look at them and you're saying, there is data in there, but it's all text. Right? It's all timestamp and message. But I wish I could grab this piece of data from my log. It actually tells me something, it's useful, so I can actually visualize and do something with it. Right? So often that's the case with machine logs. There's data there that you can use for something else. You want to turn it into something like that. You want to turn it into, it's a bit too small, but the gist here is this is my log entry, and I'm actually extracting a whole bunch of fields out of it, right? And pushing them into Elasticsearch. They're automatically indexed based on the data type, whether it's IP address or text or keyword or a number. And I can visualize them. I can do search. I can do aggregations. I can do sort of business analytics. I can create alerts. So that's kind of where we want to get to. So turning your text into structured data. That's the kind of the point of this Lambda plus the setup and the demo. Bit of an ingest pipeline. So this is how I parse the data. That's all there is, right? So you mentioned about grok. So you didn't like to write grok. So this is everything you had to say about that log, and it just gets parsed. That's all, right? Because I think the community behind Logstash, or community, they've been doing this log parsing of access.logs or Apache logs so long, and so many times someone just said, we know what that is. It never changes. Bang, right? So solved problem. You can obviously create something more complex. There's other processors you can use. You can build fairly complex processing pipeline. But in this case, for Nginx, that's pretty much all I had to do. I had to basically say, my message parses with combined Apache log, kind of like a grok keyword. I then said, well, this is how you interpret data. Actually, I didn't do it. There's a capability in Elasticstack to auto-detect your ingested data. So I can show you, hopefully the network allows it, but it's been auto-detected for me. I did have to basically rename an agent field into something else because there was a bit of a clash with out-of-the-box mapping, but just nothing works out of the box as you expect, so you have to kind of do a bit of filing of the edges. And this is the config, right? This is the beauty of function, because that's pretty much all it takes to configure this Lambda to parse my log files and send them into Elasticsearch. So I'm saying, this is the bucket name where to deploy my Lambdas. This is provider. I just give it a name. This is what my Lambda is going to be called with the description. What's the type is. This is me pointing it at the log group, right? Saying this is the var log nginx access log group. It's not a file. It's a log group, right? It's just, I called it after a file. And saying when you're pushing it into Elasticsearch, I could have skipped that by defining the pipeline to be the default pipeline on the index, but I said, well, how about we call it explicitly what we want to do. So I'm doing the parsing in Elasticsearch itself. And hopefully, if my network connection works, I'll be able to show you a very simple Kibana visualization. So this is kind of the point why we're parsing the log file. We want to show some data. We want to see, it's easy to do counts over time, but how many of them were 200s versus 404s? How many of them, which user agents are my users using to call my Nginx server? How many sort of responses I'm getting, 200s versus 404s, or which URLs my users are hitting. So this is kind of the stuff you want to start enabling, right? This is the kind of using one simple Lambda to go from unstructured logs to something that you can graph and visualize with. Now the actual demo. So this is my Kibana instance. I think the only thing interesting to show here is the right. So everything else is basically just a text file. So if we go back to an hour, let's say last hour, and let's say we'll run some more. Okay, first of all, I'll SSH into the box. If I'm still connected, yep, it's actually working pretty well. I'll just create something with a new. I'll just run a whole bunch of new access log files with a different user agent. We'll just call it 4Fs. And let's just make it a valid URL rather than breaking it. I think just a for loop. Probably should have run it silently. So we can actually see the CloudWatch logs starting to flow into Kibana through the chain. So it's my EC2 instance pushing it into CloudWatch, and then my Lambda forwarding them to Elasticstack, hosted Elasticstack. That's actually running in AP Southeast 2, so in AWS in Sydney. It's hosted by, it's Elastic Cloud. So Oh yeah, here they basically the first 200 events starting to come through. It's fairly, so it's all real time. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't zoom into basically into the bars. The bars stay skinny. But this is what basically we get. We get a new agent type, user agent. We get basically the new slice in the pie, saying, well, there's new user agent that joined the team. There's it's green because it's 200s. We get an increased count on 200s that we're getting. We're getting the root slash being hit sort of more 7,000 times. So that's the point behind parsing the text and getting some useful data of it, right? And it didn't take much. It's just pure sort of simple configurations, a few lines of config of the function beat. It's YAML now. I don't know if network's gonna allow me to show you the actual data. It's coming, yep. So I think I've got I've got 3 bars on 3G now, which is good. So yeah, that's the original log entry. See, it's there as a message, but I've used it to parse a whole bunch of useful stuff out of it. So there's refer, there's user agent, there's a whole lot of stuff. Yeah. Very simple demo, very simple component, serverless. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah, feel free. Yep. Oh, it's pretty much becomes Lambda. Let me show you the configuration. So you can configure how it auto scales. You can basically control various parameters, how it's basically auto scaling, so it doesn't auto scale you out of business. It's slow.
Is the Lambda processing single JSON lines, or is it processing big JSON chunks?
So the subscription so the Lambda gets triggered for every new entry in CloudWatch as a new, so your log group gets a new entry. That kicks off subscription kicks off a new Lambda. So if there's more Lambdas, so regardless if you've got an instance of the Lambda running already, you'll kick off another instance. So you'll have some sort of pool of Lambdas. I think if they're being busy, they'll stay up. If they're not busy, they'll get one down. So then next time you if there's a bit of a pause in CloudWatch logs, they'll all get spun down, but I think I need to. Yeah, so I'm trying to point at the documentation. Sorry, I think I lost my, it's gonna ask me for MFA code. Okay, that's probably, no, not gonna happen in this demo. So yeah, you can create basically auto scaling limits in the configuration file. Let me show you what it looks like. It's a big YAML config with quite a lot of options in there. So here you can specify concurrency. So let me just you can specify a hard limit, how many of them should be running at any given time. You can specify things like memory size. You can specify dead letter queue if your destination is not available or there's a failure, like one of the processors fails, the message will get put on a destination queue. You can use custom roles. You can put in a VPC with subnet IDs and so on and so forth. You can tag your environment. This is me configuring the group, the log group name, and then I can also filter. I can say only trigger it when this CloudWatch log matches a certain pattern, because you may have a log with all kinds of things going in there. So you can specify a pattern that gets filtered. You can also use the same Lambda to pick up multiple triggers, because see, it's an array, YAML equivalent of YAML collection. So you can specify you can use the same Lambda to kind of collect data from the same destination. Different destinations. Yeah, so there's a section for Kinesis, section for SQS, there's a section for GCP. I think it's we're trying to build something common for a whole range of cloud providers, just to kind of do it in a serverless way. Yep.
If I had an application running in the
Yeah.
What is the advantages? Is there advantages to use the function bit instead of application sending its logs? Why?
Okay. If you have logs written locally and you're using an EC2 instance, you may want to use a file beat, right? This is another beat that just picks it up, picks up a file and sends it. It works in a very similar way, sort of defining a chain of processes, pointing at a destination, if that's what you want. But sometimes your logs end up in CloudWatch anyway, right? So you're using something out of the box that writes CloudWatch logs. So this is, you have to pick your logs from CloudWatch, or you want them in CloudWatch for sort of as like a centralized log repository. So in this particular case, you pick it up from CloudWatch, but there's function B can also support SQS and Kinesis at this stage.
If you your CloudWatch logs into S3, can you just pick them from that?
Oh, well, it doesn't support S3 yet, but if you basically, you need to stream your S3 log, like it works the other way. So you need to stream S3 bucket into an SQS, and then you can pick it up from SQS, for example, right? I think eventually it will support S3, but it's going to be interesting because it's like, yeah. At the moment, it's actually, I think we need to do something separate to stream the logs into S3. Where is it? Where was it? Yeah, I think here, right? So if you want S3, you'd probably want to use something like FileBeat. If you want to pick it up from S3, I'd use FileBeat that runs on like on an EC2 instance or an EKS or ECS to pick it up. It's got an S3 input, so out of the box. Yeah. Any more questions? All right. Thanks, everyone. Sure.
Thank you. All right, so they're setting the pizza up now. Before we walk off to have the pizza, is there anybody who is looking for people? Is anybody hiring? Just show of hands if you're hiring. No one's hiring? I like it when no one's hiring because that means pizza quicker. Guy?
So AC3 is not always hiring. So if you're working in AWS Cloud,
AC3 is one of our silver sponsors as well. And you get a chance to work with Guy, who is a regular presenter, so. You can decide that for yourself. Was there anybody else that's hiring? Oh yeah, sorry, of course.
Hello everyone, just want to have a quick negative feedback for AWS. There's so much in demand that we're having trouble keeping up. If you enjoyed this talk, and this is something that you enjoy doing, and also the next talk, that's the kind of work that we do at Enabler for large organizations. And if you're interested and want to do that as a day job, please find me or Kathleen sitting over there, and just get in touch with us and talk more. Thank you.
Cool. Is there anyone else? No one else? Cool. Pizzas are set up down the back. We will break for about half an hour or so. We'll be back at 7:30 for our second presentation. Not too loud, not too soft. Turn it up. Didn't have time for a sound check tonight, so we're playing everything by ear. How's that? That's better? I should get the video off the screen first. Okay. Hi everyone, welcome along to the 85th Melbourne AWS user group. We're here tonight obviously to talk Amazon and to pay our respects to our beloved dearly departed Deep Racer, which after completing one whole lap, died. So I'd like everyone to join us in a minute of silence. No, we won't go quite that far. It has a storied history though. It tasted human blood on its first day out of the box, and thereafter the algorithm seemed to favour running into people's legs as opposed to going around the track. All right, so is anyone new here tonight? Some new faces? Wow, that's a lot of new faces. Is anybody here from out of town, so happen to be coming for Friday? Cool, a few people. Just a bit of housekeeping. The toilets are down the stairs, back to the left, and around past the goods lift. You can't miss them. I think that's our only housekeeping item. So agenda for tonight, we've done the first part. Pizza seems to be all gone. There are still some beers left though, so that's good. Still plenty of vegetarian pizza left. Over on my left. Everyone's making a beeline for it, that's good. I'm doing the introductions now. We'll have the guys come up on stage straight after that to give you what's new in AWS. Then we'll have Pete, our first presenter. Pete's over in the corner here. Pete's come all the way from Perth just for tonight, and also tomorrow. Then we'll have a quick marketplace segment. If you're looking for work or if you're looking for employees, this is your chance to meet people and make connections. Following which we'll have a short break. And then we have Jean, sorry. Second presentation, lightning talk about AWS Protected. That's just here in Australia, or is that global? Sydney only. Cool. Looking forward to more on that one. If anybody else would like to jump up on stage and give a lightning talk, doesn't have to be anything prepared. You can literally come up and open the GitHub repo of your favorite tool and tell us about it. Like, those are actually really interesting for a lot of people. So around 8 PM, we'll wrap up and move on. But we can't do this without our sponsors. And throughout this whole year, 2019, Enabler have been our gold sponsor. So a big thanks to them. As well, we have AC3, ACAR Guru, and Parallels as our silver sponsors. And it's thanks to those companies that we can put this event on. Like, the pizza's not very cheap, the beers are not cheap. Like, all of this gear, everything takes time and money, and they make it possible. So big thanks to them. As well, we have this venue, which is YBF Ventures, that AWS, very grateful that they pay for this venue for us. So it takes care of the venue rental, cleaning, all of that sort of stuff. So, who are we? We're organisers this year. I'm Rob. Chris is down the back there in the Australian t-shirt with the old logo on it. I need to get you a new t-shirt. Ian is away on a Amazon-sponsored junket to Seattle. Not that we're cranky or anything about that. We also have a Slack channel, or a Slack team, that's fairly active. There's about 500 or so members on that, with 10% being active at any one time during the day. It's a great place to get more involved in the user group, to ask questions, to discuss outages, announcements, anything Amazon. We also have a website, which is new this year. On that, you'll find the links to the next upcoming event, more about how you can get involved. We also post event recaps after each event, and links to our live stream and to the YouTube channel. So we do live stream these events. There's a camera right here. They're all recorded as well, and everything goes up on the YouTube channel at the end of the night, or a couple of days after, or a couple of weeks after, because I haven't done last month's yet. Your general reminder that registration is still open for reInvent. There is a page on there if you need to convince your boss to go, like detailed instructions on how you talk them into letting you go. Better yet, how to get them to pay for it so you can go would be the better one. But it's a great event if you haven't been. It's 4 days, 5 days of AWS mayhem, really. Just the sheer number of people makes it worthwhile to go and watch. Also on this week, and a little bit closer to home, the slide's out of date because registration is not open anymore, but you can still register to watch the live stream of the keynote. Who's coming along on Friday? Yeah, there's a few people. Should be a really good day. So that's the end of my part. With that, I'll hand over to Chris and John.
Bonjour. So Arjen's away on his junket, so I needed somebody to help me out. So Jean-Manuel very kindly offered to run through the news.
Yeah, thank you.
So we'll give that a go.
Yeah. No. Hello?
All right, so the first item, as always, is what's new in Sydney. Yay! We've got 3 this week, very exciting. So the first one is actually pretty bonkers. So if you use Redshift, you'll know that sometimes if you get a lot of requests at a certain time of day, maybe you get a lot of queries from when your team log on at 9 a.m. Redshift will start to queue those, and everything will slow right down. So Amazon have released a feature called concurrency scaling, which means you can scale out temporarily and pretty fast, and it's called concurrency scaling. And one of the best things about this feature is that you accrue credits throughout the day. So if your Redshift cluster is running for 24 hours, you get a free hour of concurrency scaling, just for free. So like 90% of customers never pay for it, right?
Yeah, and they capture the data, and the Redshift can scale automatically for you to do more concurrence queries. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fantastic. The next one is super easy to talk about.
What? IoT? I don't know.
It's just a reduced price. So like, if you are using IoT Core and Device Manager, like we love these when we finally get a price reduction in Sydney. Okay, and then next one.
Yeah, Amazon FSx, if people know what it is, it's running basically the Windows file server inside the AWS space. You need to do CFDFS between multi-AZ, but the good thing is now you can support shadow copies. So that was not possible before. Shadow copies for people who are used to Windows environment. You can go back in time and then see what the file looked like and the file system looked like and restore files very quickly from the user. You can schedule them through PowerShell script, and yeah, it's pretty cool. You can like automatic backup and self-service for users to restore their own file if they do mistakes. It's cool.
Which never happens, right?
So, human
next slide is my favorite slide, serverless.
Yes.
So you can now write your Lambda and Edge functions in Python.
Yeah. Before what, Node.js?
Just Node.js.
And
Yeah.
now Python. Yeah. I'll prefer Python. You
So
prefer Node.js?
I prefer Node.js, but as long as it's not YAML, we're good. SNS, you can now filter on keys, so you can start doing filtering not just on the value, but on the key. That's pretty cool. And step functions, like his tail's all the way down now, because your step function can trigger a step function, which can trigger a step function, and just yeah, just be careful. But it's pretty cool that that's available.
Do you know how long it lasts, the step function?
Like
1 year.
1 year.
You can have a step function for 1 year running. So yeah, be careful of what you're doing inside.
So the next slide is Arjen's slide. but he's not here.
Yeah, I don't know anything about containers. I'm not sure.
Like,
What is that?
it's the per container swap space parameters. Yeah.
Cool on that.
So there were containers, they did things.
It's only if you run like bare metal stuff.
Yeah. Well, so it was really interesting. So everybody should join our Slack, which is, what was it again?
It's like the AWS UG, but not
That?
Bottom.
Yeah, it's also on the screen.
Oh, it's on the screen. Yeah.
Yes.
You should join our Slack because there was, when this announcement came out on the announcements channel, there was like a thumbs up and then there was a question like, who needs this?
Yes.
Like nobody couldn't work out what this was for. So it's, but clearly somebody asked for it.
Knows what who this is targeted at? Yeah, jump on Slack and tell us.
Yeah,
We have
let us
no
know.
idea.
The next one,
The mesh, you know the collaboration?
what's the mesh? Yeah. No, because he's not here, we're just going to skip it. AIML, this one, so Amazon have a lot of AIML services. Recognition's one of those, which is just an API endpoint. So you throw an image at Recognition, and it will throw you results, show you, send you results back. And so now it's got improved detection of violence, nudity, and self-injury. This is clearly the case here is so that human beings don't have to filter these things, right? So it's saving people the heartache of having to look at that kind of content. We can now have AIML doing moderation for you. And that's just behind an API, you don't need to do any fancy stuff. And if you did want to do fancy stuff, you can use
Celebrator.
and it now offers managed spot training, so you can do that at super low cost.
The biggest problem with Celebrator was expensive, right? So now you can do sport. It's up to 90% cheaper to use sport to do Celebrator. Can you do Celebrator for this? Can you use sport for this?
Oh, for that? Oh, I don't know.
No?
We'll get back to you.
Okay.
And Forecast, which is Amazon's managed forecasting services, also has gone GA. But I've started a new thing. Like if it's GA, it's not in Sydney, put a star next to it, like in the last asterisk. So watch out, one day this will be in the Now in Sydney news, but right now it isn't. Databases. Everybody loves databases, am I right? Yeah? Okay. Aurora now multi-master GA, asterisk, so you can have multiple masters you can write to.
Yeah, US West, sorry, and Ireland, that's it. Mostly.
So we look forward to all those Aurora features.
Pretty cool. Dual masters, multi-AZ, no downtime if you fail, that's a cool thing. Yeah.
There's some disclaimers with it, so definitely read those before you jump in with both feet. But yeah, definitely.
What's the thing? They put a proxy in front and then they proxy.
So there is a bit of a write-up on how it works, and there's some what happens when there's contention for rights. So it's definitely worth checking that page out. Maybe we could do a talk on it sometime. Hands up if you love multi-master databases, and we should do a talk on it. Okay, right. Maybe we'll do like a lightning talk. Yep.
Amazon EMR, before you had to encrypt it, it was complex. Now you can just use EBS encryption with Skynet. It's pretty cool. You can encrypt the volume, you can encrypt the data volume, so no more Slack or CUS, or follow the exact encryption system you had to use before. That's pretty cool. Just a click, KMS encrypted data for EMR. So more about managing your data in the safe way, and if you have PI information in there, you need to have encryption, so keep it simple.
Yeah, there's something
You're online for the stream audio?
Yep, cool.
Warm welcome to Jason, who threw this together this afternoon for us.
Thank you.
Whether you
I know. Yeah, so as Rob said, I threw this together this afternoon. So it's light on PowerPoints and more on the demo side of things. So I'll start off with a little bit about myself. So I'm currently work for Telstra Purple. We came from Cloud Solutions, which was my where I initially signed on for, and yeah, Telstra has sort of owned a bunch of companies and put them all together now under the Telstra Purple brand. So I've got a few AWS certificates there, and yeah, I've been with Purple for just under 2 years, and I work as a cloud engineer in our managed services team. So one of the things that we've been looking at just recently is conformance packs. So these were launched just before reInvent, so still a fairly new service, and there's some things that are changing as we speak. Yeah, so the launch announcement is up there. So yeah, basically what it does is it takes your AWS config rules, bundles them up into a YAML file, and then lets you launch that and distribute it across your various accounts. So yeah, as I said, file format's in YAML, so it's good. You can throw in hashtags to document your code, and yeah, it's still an early release. So a couple of things that I've found that were giving me some grief a few weeks ago, and went to show my team and went, hey, look, they don't do this, it's stupid, and it worked. So that's good that it was getting better. So yeah, as I said, there was not a whole lot in the slideshow. So let me jump in and I will show you what the config file looks like. So let me just zoom in a little bit more. So it's pretty much a basic YAML file. You can have parameters up the top, put in your descriptions there. So this is the your tag value. Yeah, you put in as I said, the description and the string type. Yeah, as you can see there in the comments, I said it doesn't allow CSVs, but that works now. So the main section of what your code will look like is under the Resources tab. And let me just switch across to the config. Let me just go. There. Here we go. So this is the, if you want to go to set up any of your YAML file, this is the page to come to. It's under the AWS config guide and the list of managed rules. So you can jump in there, find the rule that you want, and basically what you need to pull out is the identifier. This is the important thing that you need in your YAML file to tell you, or to tell AWS what rule you want to invoke. And underneath here, it gives you info on the different parameters that you can put in. So let me switch back to my config file. So yeah, so we'll see here, this is the source identifier. So that was that rule, or the entry out of the rule that you need in. And you also need to put in a config rule name. So this is what will be shown up in the config screen when you have a look at the rules. And this is just a tag there. in the documentation, there's a whole lot of sample templates in there that you can pull out, which is pretty much what I did. Grabbed one of those and played around with it for a bit. Most of these, I first started playing ones that didn't have any extra parameters in, but then I jumped down here to test out a few things. Within the file, you can set a scope to only look at certain resource types. So by default, the required tags, if you don't put a scope in, will go through and look at anything that can be tagged to see if those required tags are there. If you want to limit that down like I've done here, you can put in the compliance resource types and put your list of types there. For this particular one, for the required tags, if you have a look back at the document, that will give you a whole list of the resource types that it will work on. So you can choose your list from there. Also had to play around with a couple of the input parameters in a couple of different ways. So you'll see here, tag one key, I've just got the key there, so that will then match any value that you put in. So it'll just check to make sure that the tag's there and won't really care about what value is in that tag. You can come here, the second one, where I've put in both the tag key and the tag value. So these values, comment separated list, and yeah, so it'll check for the environment tag, and it needs to be one of those two values there. And finally, using the parameters, you set the tag key, and then for the value, you just ref the parameter that you've got up the top. All right, so that's all well and good. Let's have a look at how it works. I just spun up a little environment this afternoon. Pretty much I've got just used the North Virginia, that's why nothing's there. Right, so I launched just a basic AWS config, just using the basic rules. One of the, probably before I jump into that, there are a couple of prereqs that you need to have in when you're doing your conformance packs. So these can get you if you just want, if you just sort of grab a sample file and go to jump in, find things that don't work, you might need to come here. So as I said, step one, AWS config recording needs to be turned on. Usually you'll have that anyway, but that's gotcha. You also need to create a new service linked role for the conformance packs. So yeah, this is just a copy and click, launch that into your account. This is the big one that may get you if you just skip through and don't bother to read. But there's a whole bunch of extra policies that you need to add into the bucket policy that you're sending your logs out to. So for mine, I sent it out to the same bucket that the config was going to. So just need to add all this in. Obviously, change the red bits with your bucket name and your account ID, and away you go. So yeah, this can sort of throw up. And as I said here, just underneath that, there's a whole bunch of samples to grab and play with. So, how does this all go together? And it loads up. Yeah, it's actually like really simple to launch this, which is one of the things that I like. select your template file. Click on next. Need to give it a name. And choose your bucket from the list. Here's one thing that's fun in games. You can put in a optional bucket prefix, but it doesn't like uppercase even if your path does have it. So yeah. Now, this is one of the things that that got me a couple of times when I was playing around. If you've got parameters in your file, you need to actually manually add them in here. So if we go back to my parameter name, add that in there, and I think and put in there. Yeah, as I was saying earlier on, when I was playing around with this, I went to put in a second value and kept getting errors. It didn't like having the comma in there, but they've obviously, even though the type that I was putting in was a CSV, yeah. But as I said, they fixed that now, so that's handy. And then we just do next. Gives you your overview, and click deploy. And it's as simple as that. It does take a little bit of time to run through. So I'll skip back to the PowerPoint. Let's just launch it from here. So yeah, there was a couple of things in here that I want to test out. So the conformance packs will allow for accessing cross-account buckets. Still need to play around with testing out aggregation, and you can. It does work with organisations, hopefully nicely. So if you have a look back on the doco page, it'll give you some information. There's a whole lot of extra commands to launch for the organisation, and you know, display, list, and delete for the organisation. As I said, so this couple of links that I think are important for this one. That's obviously the prereqs that I showed you just before, and then the list of the managed rules. So hopefully by now this should have launched. Let me just refresh. Hey, cool. So that's completed there. Couple of interesting things that I have found. You'll see here it shows 12 rules. I've got about 25 or so in there. So I'm not sure what the deal is with these particular ones, why these are shown and the others aren't. Potentially it could just be rules that are either compliant or non-compliant. There are some that don't have statuses. Also too, you'll see under the rule label, you've got conformance pack and an ID, but if you have a look in the settings, it's nothing that really tells us what that ID is. So if you've launched a couple of different conformance packs, yeah, I'm not sure how you can tell which one's which from the GUI. So as I said, this is still like obviously early days for it, and needs a bit of feedback to the team. But in general, though, then you can see all of the rules there. So there's a few more than 10. So as I was saying, with the see if I can find the required tags.
So those ones that like, just obviously have something that doesn't exist, appears to that rules that
Yeah, correct.
not compliant or
Correct, yeah. So just like once you've launched it, they just act like your standard config rules. So if they don't have anything, if that service isn't there, for example, VPC endpoints, you don't have there's nothing to show. Yeah, as I said, this was done this afternoon, so literally I just used the default account. It's got 2 instances in there, and that's about it. So, and just like the standard config rules, click in and go through more details. What you will notice though is dialog box up here. So, saying that the rule was created by the conformance pack. So you don't have the options to perform any actions to, if you want to try and reevaluate the rule or whatnot. So have some limitations in that. But otherwise, for most things, so you can see, so one of those I made sure I tagged correctly. The other one I put some of the tags in, but not all of them, so showing up as non-compliant. But yeah, I mean, I think for us as a managed service, but anyone that's got sort of multiple accounts that you want to have a standard set of rules that you move out, it's a really handy tool for that. One of the other things that sort of a little bit of a, well, not so much gotcha, but it's just not quite as straightforward if you're used to doing CloudFormation and doing updates to the templates. You can still do that here with the conformance packs, but it's actually under edit. So then all you do is just template, put in the upload the new template and launch it. One thing that is a bit of a pain in the backside, if you just want to update parameters, it won't do that. You need to, if you want to edit, you actually need to sort of relaunch that the template again, and then change the parameters if you want to do that. So so some limitations there, which is, as I said, that's a little bit of a pain in the backside. Something that needs to be fixed.
Is there a library of compliance packs, like for security, for example, like common packs? Something like that?
So, yeah, there is some that AWS have. If we go to deploy conformance pack, as you can see here, we've got sample templates. And so they've only got a small amount here. So operational best practices for AWS Identity and Access Management, best practices for DynamoDB, S3, PCI, DSS. So you can roll those ones out. That's the only ones that already exist. There may be times when the community might start to put stuff together, but for now, as far as ones that AWS give you, it's just those 4. So that was my sort of thrown together at 2:30 Prezzo on conformance packs. Anyone have any questions? Yep, sure.
So say if you got a couple hundred accounts in your organisation, can you automatically apply the conformance packs?
Yeah, so one of the things that it will do is managing conformance packs for all accounts in your organisation. So you can set up a cross-account bucket, push things out. So there's the commands there to delete, describe, get and put your conformance packs out to your organizations. So that's obviously if you've got an organization set up. Yeah, if you've just got multiple accounts, then yeah, you'll need to throw it out yourself. But yeah, as I was saying, one of the other things that I want to try and play around with, have a look to see how it works, is the if you're using aggregation, how that will go and pull things together. But yeah, so the Docker is actually not too bad. The samples, they give you some more sample templates. Again, so the ones that they've told you about there, so you can actually have a look in and see what those samples will do. You can use custom the conformance pack with custom rules. Obviously, there's Docker in. There's Docker in here on how to do that, but yeah, you need to make sure that you've got all your lambdas in place and stuff first off. And you can, if you've got config rules with remediation, again, you can put that in. So this will give, they've got some samples in there that you can follow on how to, push that out with the remediation in there. So yeah, as I said, the doco for this is actually not too bad, quite easy to follow, and it's if you have a standard set of config rules that you roll out everywhere, it's good to play around with. And being a YAML file, as I said, you've got your version control, so it unfortunately doesn't show up anywhere in the conformance pack that's info on the GUI. But at least when you're if you've got your internal processes around, you can know which version you're doing. Yeah. So and this was released just before reInvent last year. So as with lots of things that AWS do, they push out minimum viable product and then build on it. So hopefully some of these annoyances will get resolved in the not too distant future. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Did you try using custom config rules?
No, I haven't played around with custom config rules, but it definitely it can be done. And it does tell you somewhere in the documentation around this area on how to use custom config rules with your conformance packs. So yeah, as I said, unique.
The only reason I'm asking is sometimes the custom configs require certain permissions to be set between them.
Yes.
So how well does conformance packs manage it for the organization across it?
Yeah, so it does in the doco. It does say that you need to make sure you have your lambdas and your permissions all set and ready to go first off, and then actually I think there was a sample that had that. I'll have to have a. Here we go. So this sample here is for a custom rule. So that, as you can see there, your source, your custom lambda, you need to set up your source and event details. And it further in the Docker, it does tell you sort of things that you need to have configured first off. Actually, that might be in the prereqs, if I remember correctly. No, maybe not. Yeah, I can have a look and find out a little bit later, but yeah, it definitely does have info in the doco there on what you need to do to set up your lambdas and your permissions. before you implement it in the conformance pack, and then the sample gives you some guide on what to do. Yeah. So that's what I see as the main thing. If you've got a base set of config rules that you push out to across all your accounts, that we need to monitor this. We need to make sure that everything has these tags. We need to make sure that all our users have MFAs, etc. Bundle it up rather than having to do that separately each time, or roll your own. You can just bundle it all up into your Lambda, into your YAML file, and then deploy it as a conformance pack, and all of your base stuff is there. Potentially too, you can also have it configured if you've got certain apps. Here's my config file for these type of RDS, whatever. And then roll that out to your accounts that have those sorts of things. So, I definitely can see that there's a lot of potential for this, especially if you use config rules a lot. And it's as you saw it, so it's pretty straightforward to put together. All the info that you need for the particular rule is in the config doco. And wherever the hell it was. Push it out. Cool.
Thanks, Jason.
No worries. Yep. Cool. There's that one.
Thank you. Just grab that too. Thank you very much. Cool. It's like you'd presented it 1,000 times. It's like you'd presented it 1,000 times. All right, so that's us for another month. Thank you to Michael and to Jason for presenting today, especially Jason putting his hand up at the last minute. We're back again next month, possibly on that date, maybe a different date, maybe a slightly different venue. We still have it locked in next month. That's the downsides of working with a new venue. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to our sponsors as well, Enabler, AC3, CMD, and to NAB. We're going to put out a call during the week as well during next week, just for speakers and for other volunteers throughout the month. Like, if you've got something that you find interesting, I'm sure the group will find it interesting too. Doesn't have to be a well-researched deep dive into something. It could just be hey, this is a cool tool that I found that people would find interesting. This is how we discover things. And thanks again. Thanks for coming.